Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to my Dune Awakening content. So I'm so excited, folks. It's the weekend and it's finally time that I can not have to spend every second slaving for the man, and I can make some content about Dune Awakening. And I'm so excited to be able to share this right here with you, because this is so cool what they have put out for us to be able to see. It's the beta weekend roundup, and it's basically a breakdown of all the cool things that happened in the beta weekend. It's a lot of stats, a lot of stuff for nerds, but it's really neat. And if you're into Dune Awakening, I think you're really going to enjoy this. So I want to make sure you see it, and I want to kind of talk to you about it, and let's kind of look at it together. So it's the beta weekend roundup that come out yesterday. And it says how many beta players the sandworm consumed and a thank you message. It says, greetings sleepers, a great journey on Arrakis is soon upon us, but for now we'd like to briefly reflect on the beta weekend, which was extremely valuable for us ahead of launch. What we've learned has already led to various improvements and tweaks, so that's really good to hear them say that, because that's really hopeful that the time we spent in beta was more than just a stress test. I was hopeful that we as testers would uncover some things that would help them make the game better, and it does sound like that was a success. As we've been digging into all your comments and the data, we wanted to share some of the things you got up to on Arrakis. We can confirm spice was consumed and not in moderation. So let's take a look. The beta weekend deeds and deaths. Okay, in the recent beta weekend, Arrakis welcomed many of you into its blistering embrace. Here are some of the deeds we saw you perform and some of the deaths. So this is going to be really cool. 25% area of Haga Basin explored. Now they didn't really give us a total number of players, I don't think. They might somewhere on down this announcement, but I didn't see it the first time I looked through it. So it's kind of hard to gauge really what that relates to, because we don't really know how many people were in the beta weekend test. There could have been 10,000, there could have been 100,000. We don't really know. So saying that 25% area of the Haga Basin was explored is kind of a gray area. We don't really know how that relates to the amount of people that were in the test. But honestly, that number to me is surprising, because I don't know about you, but I was looking under every rock and every blade of grass and every grain of sand for anything I could find. So I feel like I pretty much probably explored, of the area that they allowed us to test, if I was to guess, I would say I probably explored about 75% of it myself. So, you know, I spent an exorbitant amount of hours in the testing weekend that weekend, though. So I think I clocked like 61 hours in 4 days. So, yeah, I was definitely on a lot. So I may be a little bit more extreme than your average nerd, but I think I spent probably about 75% of that area explored if I was to give myself a percentage. So this right here actually surprises me and kind of feels kind of low from what I would have expected. I would have expected this to be a lot more. It says that 107,959 heroes were swallowed by Shai-Hulud. So that's interesting, because myself, I got eaten by the sandworm once on accident and once on purpose. And that was just 2 times for me. So how this number is quantified by the amount of people that were in the test, again, is hard to tell. I wish they would tell us how many people were actually in the test so that we could get a really good feel for what these numbers mean. But without that number, it's kind of hard. But that is a lot. Oh my God. 107,959 times the sandworm ate somebody. That's crazy. That's nuts. I did not expect for that number to be that high. Did you? If you did, throw it down in the comments what you think. Did you think that was too high, or did you think it was going to be lower? I don't know. But that's surprising to me, honestly. And actually kind of hilarious. Yeah. So there were 214,919 vehicles crafted, and it doesn't necessarily specify what kind of vehicle, because I did see some video of some people that broke through the wall and were actually able to make an ornithopter, but I think that was just a very limited situation of like maybe 1 or 2 per weekend test. And the rest were more than likely sand bikes. I'm not even really sure if people got to the point that they could craft the buggy or not. I know you could claim one, and I know you could claim sand bikes from areas that had them. There are some half destroyed ones that you could actually run up and claim. But to see that 214,919 vehicles were crafted is just really an amazing number. Me personally, I know that I did probably 7 or 8 different characters where I tried different classes, and I think I crafted a bike on every single one of them. So at least one bike, because I was always trying to see how fast I could do it. I kind of took that as a personal challenge and thought that was pretty cool, the test itself. But that number right there is about what I may have expected, you know, because if each person did a couple each, and if each person played a few different characters, then that number could add up pretty fast, really. So that's actually a number that I kind of expected, but that's still good to see, because that means it was a lot of popularity and a lot of people figured it out, and that's good. That means your system is working if people can figure out how to do stuff, you know. This right here was a very interesting number. 9,980,575 scavengers killed. That's insane. And I don't even know how that works out, because I need to know how many people were in the beta so I can wrap my head around this number. Because me personally, if I don't know, I didn't keep track, but if I was to guess, I'd say 400 or 500 scavengers I killed by myself, maybe. Because I did do a lot of scavenger farming, trying to get levels and all that kind of stuff. So I maybe did 400 on my own across all my accounts that I played. So just doing the math on that, I don't know, but dadgum, that's a lot. That's almost 10 million scavengers were killed. That's an insane number. But it's good. I'm glad to see that, because that means that people were enjoying the combat. Because if people didn't like the combat, they would have never killed 10 million scavengers. But the fact that that many were killed shows me that people were really digging the combat, and that's a good sign, because the combat is one of the things that a lot of people are trying to make an issue out of when there's not really one. I mean, I thought the combat was great. Me personally, I thought the combat was great. I just suck and I need to get better, so that was my viewpoint on it. But I think the combat was fun and engaging, and I think it was really good, and I think people that are trying to make an issue with it are just trying to find some drama under a grain of sand somewhere, you know, and I don't really think it's an issue. But that number right there is very pleasing to see, because that means that people enjoyed the combat and they got into it, so that's really cool. This is probably my favorite number of the whole announcement right here, because that's just insane. Almost 10 million. Wow. You can only imagine what that's going to be like when the game has been out for a month. That's going to be hundreds of billions, you know, that's crazy. 56,994 new planetologists trained. Okay, so that number is crazy. I don't even know how to wrap my head around that number, because the planetologist, if you didn't know where to look, it was kind of not completely impossible to find, but just a little bit on the difficult side, just tiny bit difficult. And for that many people to have trained the planetologists means they either all watch my video on how to find it. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. They either, you know, saw some content somewhere on how to find it, or one person in the guild told everybody where to go, or multiple people showed, you know, that type of thing. it was word of mouth more than likely rather than exploration, because that was a lot of people that trained planetologists. So that's really cool. I wouldn't say that that was 56,000, 57,000 individual unique players. No, because like me, I did like 7 or 8 different accounts and I trained planetology on every one of them. So if I'm an example of the sort of norm, then my one person counted for 7 or 8 of those, and multiply that out or divide that into 57,000, whatever that is. I don't know math, but that kind of gives you an idea of roughly maybe how many people did it. But there may be a lot of people that were outliers that, only played one character and only did it once. And then there may have been a lot of people that played 15 characters and did it all 15 times. I don't know. It's hard to quantify that, but that's a really cool number too. I would really like to see what class got trained the most, but honestly, I think that was probably just a contest between planetologist and trooper, because I didn't see a trainer for any other class anywhere, and I haven't seen any content that anybody said, here's where the Mentat trainer is, here's where the Bene Gesserit trainer is, because I didn't see those initial trainers anywhere. So it's basically just a contest between planetologist and trooper. So if you know something different, and you prove me wrong, tell me where they were at. I would love to know. So throw that in the comments down there if you would. I would love to know where some of those other trainers are. But anyway, that's a cool number. Now we get to see some of the stats of the skills that were used, and this was very interesting. 1,086,763 enemies were controlled by the voice. That's the Bene Gesserit skill, to draw an enemy out of cover and bring them to you, where you can selectively pick your targets, type of thing. That's a very useful skill. A little bit lower than what I would have expected, but then this one right here blows that skill stat out of the park, man. 8,483,054 times somebody used a sugar wire claw. I mean, wow, that's amazing. That right there shows the ultimate utility of that skill, because I know I was using it. I was using that claw all over the place, man. I threw that sucker out every chance I got to jerk myself around, and it was so cool. I loved it. So that doesn't surprise me that that's that high, but just that number is crazy. God, I wish I knew how many people were in the weekend test. That would be so amazing to know. Sentinel turrets deployed, 1,779,935. I would have kind of thought that might have been a little higher too, honestly, but that's an insane number still. A very useful skill. So good. So good. Swordmaster knee charges, 2,615,714 times. That doesn't surprise me either, because that was one of those critical combat skills that you open with. So every time you fought something, you did it pretty much. And I even used this skill to help me traverse the desert when I was doing my Swordmaster playthrough, because why not? It got you across space faster, so do it, So I think that's a pretty accurate representation. 4,093 spice hallucinations experienced. And this one right here, I don't really know how to explain, because I don't know if this is from the trial of Akal, where you go in there and you actually smell the spice and do the spice trip. I don't know if that's what they're talking about, or if they were talking about people using the spice-induced food to cause them to go into the the addicted state to where they could do their special moves. I don't know if that's what that represents, but if this refers to the trial of Akal, the first trial that you do where you smell the spice and do the hallucination thing, this is kind of interesting, because this is very low compared to what I would have expected this to be, if that's what it refers to. Because if that's what it refers to, then I kind of wonder just how many people were in the test if this is all that did that, because surely most people didn't skip that, because that was one of the main things you had to do to kind of start your progression. If you didn't do that first spice hallucination, you kind of limited your progression. So I would have thought this would have been a lot higher than that. So I don't really understand this one. I don't know if it's accurate or if it's just we're not understanding what metric it's talking about. It may be referring to the spice-induced state that you get your character in so you can do your special moves. And if that's the case, then I could totally understand that, because that's something that didn't come until later on in your progression, until after you got your character to a certain level where you could acquire that spice melange, or whatever it was that got you to that place. So I could kind of understand that. But if this is in reference to the trial of Akal, I don't really get that. That's so low that I don't understand it. I wish they'd kind of explain that one a little more. If there was one thing on this whole readout I would like to see explained a little bit better, it'd be this one right here. So liters of water consumed, 151,749. That's crazy, because I would have expected that to be way higher than that. Really. Because me personally, I felt like I drank that much water by myself. So I'm just kind of wondering, because I was constantly dying of thirst and I was constantly drinking out of my liter johns. So I'm just kind of wondering about that one too. That's kind of a mystery as well. Liters of blood harvested, 8,715,331. That's super cool. That shows that that mechanic was of the utmost importance to a lot of people, because they got it, that the blood purifiers were a very important mechanic that you had to master real quick to be able to survive, your moisture situation. Unique schematics learned, 491,035. That's a pretty interesting number as well. I know personally I probably learned, I don't know. It's hard for me to quantify this because I didn't pay attention. But I'd say maybe 50 per character times 7 playthroughs. So I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I don't know. That one's kind of a hard one to understand as well. Okay, so here we go. We had 13,245 people were awoken through the trial of Akal. I don't know if that means they just did the first one, or that means they did them all that were available to us, and then that only counts those people that did them all the way through to the end of the testing ability that we had. I don't know, but that kind of in relation to this one kind of helps maybe explain that a little bit more. Maybe this is in reference to the spice-induced state that your character gets into, and this is in reference to the actual trial of Akal. If that's the case, then that's a lot higher number, and that's a little bit better to kind of reckon against the amount of people that we kind of guess was in the weekend test. I don't know. That's still seems kind of low to me. I would have expected that based on these other numbers, the 8 millions and the 9 million. I would have thought that this would have been way more, but maybe there just wasn't as many people in there as we thought there was. 10,063 people got lost in sandstorms. I don't know if it was people or bikes that decayed and got destroyed by sandstorms, but that's a pretty high number, more so than I would have thought, because from what I've seen during the testing, it was pretty easy to get to the sheltered state. Even on a bike, all you had to do was kind of just hug the wall and get an overhang that went over your head just a little bit, or duck in a building, or put it up in your vehicle backup tool and then get, shelter for yourself. And I can't really see how this many of them were destroyed. Maybe it was just carelessness and people leaving them out. I don't know, but that's pretty high. 65,473 people withered away in the sun. So that means they died to the heat of Arrakis and the death of moisture loss. So that was an interesting stat as well. So all in all, these were some very cool statistics to see. I really love it when companies do neat things like this, because during a testing phase they have the ability to keep track of all different kinds of metrics like this. How many times did somebody do a flip, how many times did somebody break their finger? I mean, just anything you could think of, they have the ability to run those metrics on those items that they're looking at and testing for. So the fact that they shared this interesting stuff with us is really cool. I think this really adds a lot of flavor to the community to let us know, hey, this is what you did. This was the cool things that you guys did, and we appreciate you in your testing endeavor. I think this is super cool that they shared this stuff. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and let's talk about it a little bit and just kind of have some fun with it, because it was super cool. So I was really thrilled to see them share this information. So thank you for watching my content. I really appreciate you being here. I know it's the weekend and you got a million other things that you could be doing, but you decided to share some of that time with me, and I really appreciate it. If you enjoy this content or you found it entertaining at all, please think about subscribing and help me get to my next milestone of 5,000 subscribers. That's my goal, and I'd like for you to carry me across the finish line. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video about Dune Awakening coming soon. Peace.